Okay, the next definition is called base anchor, and we just talked about the word base. Well, a base anchor to me is always going to refer to an anchor that looks like this. To me, this is what I think of when I think of a base anchor. It's a U-shaped piece of metal. It's a strap that's been bent a couple of times, and what this is meant to do is to allow you to attach your mullion to the floor in generally a sidelight frame. It could also be where you have a sidelight frame with you'll have a mullion if it's a sidelight frame, and you'll need to attach that to the floor, and sometimes you'll use a base anchor. Sometimes in sidelight frames you have a really wide sidelight. You can have a 3-foot door and then have 10 feet of sidelight, a sidelight structure to the next of it. Maybe not 10 foot, but let's say 9 foot 8, 3 foot, 3 foot, 3 foot, a couple of mullions in there, and they all go down, the mullions go down to a 4-inch sill. Well, sometimes when you've got a 9 foot 8 long sill section, you're going to want to anchor that sill to the floor so the sill doesn't move. Now, a base anchor is meant to attach a mullion to the floor. But you could have a sidelight frame where it's only half glass, where the mullion actually doesn't... The mullion goes all the way to the floor, but only half of it is a double-sided jamb, meaning a mullion. Below the sidelight frame, it will be open back so that the wall construction can go inside of the throat of the mullion. A mullion in that scenario will have a hat channel attached up top where the glass is to take a typical jam stock and turn it into a double-sided jam stock or mullion. But the bottom line is when you have your mullion, which is a double-sided piece of jam stock, run all the way to the floor, or something that you need to anchor to the sill or to the floor, you'll use a base anchor like this. And we'll talk more in a minute about everything I kind of just said. But this base anchor, what are you going to use this exactly for in terms of, you've got it, it's been strapped to the frame, now what do I do with it? Well, here's what you do with it. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. So you receive welded sidelight frames, whatever it is. It could be borrowed lights, whatever it is. And they've got to be anchored to the floor. So what you have to do first is, on your frame, you'll have a floor anchor on the jamb side. There'll be a small L-shaped piece of metal welded to the bottom of the jamb or to the base of the jamb. But on the other side, there's not a floor anchor because there's no way to get to the floor anchor because the mullion goes all the way down to the floor. Well, what you do is you're going to put your frame in place, and you'll know where it's going to go. But before you do that, you have to determine the location of the base anchor. And you'll measure in the opening where it goes, and you'll attach this to the floor, or to the ground of the sill, whatever it is. You'll then take your sidelight frame, and you will put it down on the floor, but you're going to put it down such that the mullion goes over the base or mullion anchor, and caps off like this and goes all the way down and then sits on the floor. This is hidden inside the throat or the inside of that mullion. And then what you do is generally someone will take a Tech screw and drill through the 2-inch face of the mullion into the back of the mullion anchor or base anchor. I suppose you could weld it. That's pretty atypical. And because it's going inside of the frame, if this is for 5 3/4, the OD of this should be 5 9/16 maybe. Yeah, and sure enough. Yeah, it's closer to 5/8, but not exactly 5/8. So this is going to go, this will have a dimension that is basically equal to the inside clear opening of the mullion. So if you've got a 5 3/4 jam depth and it's 16 gauge, 16 gauge is 0.0625 basically. So 5 3/4 minus 0.060 minus 0.060, which is a 1/16 of an inch. 5 3/4 minus a 1/16 minus a 1/16 is 5 3/4. You probably want this to be a 30-second less than that, so it would actually slide over, because the old saying is 10 pounds of sausage don't fit in a 10-pound bag. You need a bag slightly greater than that. You can't have two things competing for that same dimension at the same time. This can't be 5 5/8, and the inside of your frame can't be 5 5/8 because they won't fit together because they need to occupy the same space. So this will be marginally smaller than that. Through these two little holes is where you will attach that down to your floor, and this is a quintessential base anchor. Now, a base anchor can also be something else, though. Let's talk about that and tying into the prior definition. Now we're back to the definition of the word base. Base is going to mean the bottom of the jam, or some situation that occurs at the bottom of the jams or at the base. So a base anchor can literally be also that floor anchor that's welded to the back side of a piece of jam stock or a frame, so that you can anchor the frame down to the floor, and then the frame's just standing there. Okay, it's just anchored. Your spreader bars are still in place. The point is that then you're going to build the wall structure up to the welded frame because it's been anchored in place using the base anchor. It's very commonly called a base anchor, but I would know it more commonly as floor anchor. I wouldn't call this a floor anchor. I'd call it a base anchor or a mullion anchor because I'm anchoring my mullion, but it would be a base anchor because in that situation with the 9'8" long 4-inch sill section, I'm not going to want that to be anchored at 9'8" here and then all the way at the mullion. I'm going to want to have something in the middle there, if not multiple anchors, where I'll place all of these base anchors down, whatever, and I would probably use the floor anchor, the mullion anchor, and then I would put 3 in the middle of there, or maybe 2, depending on what the manufacturer's recommendation was. Anchor all those and then set that large frame down on top of all of that, and then run through the face of the jam or drill it and plug weld it would be an option as well. Width of this material, obviously it has to be smaller than 1 7/8 because a typical jam is going to be a 2-inch face, and this is just slightly smaller than 1 7/8. This has to be smaller than the 2-inch face. Let's switch now to the screen view and let's take a closer look at the SDI glossary. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay. Base anchor, C anchor. Okay, so let's scroll up to anchor. Yeah, they don't have an entry here for base. So I'm thinking we're going to get to sill anchor. Fixed floor anchor. There's a fixed floor anchor or a floor anchor. Mullion anchor. Imagine if this is just one continuous piece. I sure wouldn't want it as 2 individual pieces. To me, that just seems like a lot more work. I'd want it a single piece. In fact, I've not seen every part from every major hollow metal manufacturer, far from it, but I've never seen it as a 2-piece. Or, I would have put squiggly lines here to indicate that it's a single piece and just the jam depth varies. 1 or 2 pieces. Okay, so a sill anchor, yeah, and they're referring to that here. This would certainly work. The issue is that the anchor in my hand is not a sill anchor in the sense that its overall width does not take into account the returns. So if you were going to mount a sill down to the floor, you'll need something that's made or prepped for the anchor that you're using. But you'll note they don't have an entry for mullion anchor, but that is most absolutely how I would know this as a mullion anchor because it's used for mullions. It's not exactly correct as a sill anchor because you'd have to modify something. You'll figure that out really quick. Then with this, you don't have any good way of attaching this at all. I might notch the return if possible, so that would fit down over a mullion anchor or this sill anchor as they've drawn. And there you go. Now, what I was basically rambling on about before, in a side light frame like this, it's going to look like that. And that mullion anchor is going to sit right in here. It'll get attached to the floor, and then you'll attach it here and here. Now, What if I had... What if I had this? What if I had a frame that was like... Sorry, last time. That is awful. So AA is going to look like that. BB is going to look like that. Down here, you can't, well, you could use a mullion anchor down here if you wanted, but generally you would just have that floor anchor. That'll be welded up here and then attached down. Okay. This is a situation where that is not open. So this section here wouldn't exist from here down below, so that the wall, so that all of this could be wall section. This is all wall. Okay, that's your wall, and that's where that's what that's going to look like. Let's wrap up this video on camera. So hopefully that discusses the base anchor, its other ways in which the terminology is applied, and gives you an additional definition that's not in the dictionary about, or the glossary about, what a mullion anchor is. There you go. Let's move on to the next definition. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.